what you have here is stuff going on involving, again, like I say, you've got a military, I think, a military coup, and they have their things that they have to do. But then you have, before the assassination itself happening, what you have to do is have a plan for the cover-up. And that can't be made. You can't decide what your cover is going to be after the shooting. It doesn't work that way. Right. It requires careful coordination and control of who knows it. So we're talking about military and civilian, CIA, some people. So where am I starting my investigation for this? I want to go back to where the idea started. The idea started in July 1961, where the perfect time to do this big attack would be the fall of 1963. And Kennedy had said no over and over and over again. So who was there? Who was there? And I got the list of names of the people that were sitting there. And the name that popped out right away is a guy who just came on board for Kennedy. His name was Maxwell Taylor. He sat there and watched. And he was the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff in the fall of 1963, putting in the plan that Kennedy didn't want and the one that the chiefs had wanted back in 1961. I want to not go too much farther in some of these things. You were right about one thing. There's a few things I'm still working on that I don't actually want to put on the table, but that's where I'm going. I'm looking very carefully at who could have been in both places or could have had access to somebody in the CIA or the military who was then involved or in a position to do these types of things and hide things.
There was another defector who said that there was former U.S. presidents that were aware of the plan to assassinate Kennedy.
This is the story about the true Oswald story in Minsk. So we had a lot of investigations, the Warren Commission and then the Senate and then the House of Representatives. That was all over by the 70s. But defections were still going on. And a KGB defector came over to the CIA in 1981. Okay, his name was Sergei Papushin. It took me a while to figure that out. It was the CIA tried to make it hard because they were told not to reveal the guy's name, but you know, I have my ways of figuring things out, and a newspaper article and a few other things allowed me to put it together. Mm-hmm. So he told us the story. Actually, there was a story about him from another guy. Juralev was his name, I guess, and he said that there were two conspirators with Oswald, two American presidents that had conspired with Oswald to kill President Kennedy. Now, the problem with that was that the previous presidents, there was only Truman and Eisenhower because Kennedy was dead and everybody else before him was dead. So whoever two presidents was, those were the only two presidents that could be.
Right.
And that's crazy. And so, and it was almost just throw it in the trash can, except for there was another couple of lines in this thing that mentioned, but there was a guy who defected who was bona fide, and his name was Sergei Papushin. So then this crazy memo of this guy who walked in, we think maybe in Canada, to get a CIA guy to tell this story to. There was a throwaway sentence at the bottom, and the ARB got it and looked at it, and it was a little guy who really was nondescript. I don't even remember his name. He wasn't in the hierarchy of it. And so it went all the way up to the top, and then they asked the CIA about it. Well, the CIA actually, and you have to understand, by this point, it's 1998. Okay? That's when the ARB is the last weeks, 1998, when they put the story together. They figure out they get his CIA cryptonym, I.J. Decanter, and they get the FBI pseudonym, Flash Run, and I get all this stuff on those things, and they're the same guy. I can see that. And so you can put this guy's personality together, and there's the ball game. There were a lot of episodes in his history before he died, allegedly suicide by 1/5 of liquor, and under his bed. He dies after doing that, and that's not very convincing.
And it was right after his handlers came to visit him, right?
Yep, that's right. But in any event, the CIA forked over all this stuff, asked for the review board to not to mention the name and not to do this or that, but they sent the whole big bunch of stuff that I used, interviews, tapes that you could hear talking, all this stuff they sent. So we have plenty of stuff to work with, even the stuff that was released, and the newspaper article was very helpful because it had the story. Somebody had the story, but not the name. And I put the story together with the other stuff I had, and it was easy to figure out his whole history. So, but anyway, what he also told us led to the Oswald story in Minsk, because this guy had personal contact and knew those he had visited the KGB school there later, and some of those teachers were still around, and they told him what they had talked to Oswald and everything. So this came out. His defection was 1981, but it wasn't until much later that all these pieces came together, just before the ARRB closed shop. So there were a lot of FBI files that were not collated with the CIA files and so on. So it took a number of years for all this to happen. But it was easy. It was just so easy because I had all the information, and you can look at the chapter yourself. You decide whether you like it or not, and if you don't like it, that's your prerogative. Right. But it is one of these things that has multiple independent attestation, and there's nothing you can do about it. The FBI files, the CIA files, everything fits together. This guy was for real. He was bona fide, but eventually something happened. They didn't like something he was doing, and we have precious time now. We don't have to worry about that. But that's how I put that chapter together, and how it was the last act of the ARB that was sitting wide in the open all this time, and I finally decided to use it. I hadn't used it in any of my books, and then I decided, because we were talking about Oswald over in Russia, I thought, well, it's time to put that in the book. Right. So chapter 3 is, Oswald in Minsk.